Baba knows the way. For Joseph Baba Ifa, Baba knows the way. We follow the signs. He walks with the Orisha through sacred lines. He speaks with the ancients. He honors the drum. He carries the wisdom where we all come from.
Hey family, thank you for tuning into Our Roots podcast with Joseph Baba Ifa. We're only the strongest roots, see the light, brought to you by Botánica candles and more. If you haven't had the opportunity, hit that subscribe button. Phil the podcast doctor, what's up, bro?
Hey, happy Sunday, everybody. Joseph, what's going on, man? I am doing well. How are you?
All is good, man. Just loving that new intro.
It's
great.
pretty bomb. If anybody didn't see the live, we explained it on how I made it.
Yeah. Shout out to Phil, man.
So, yeah.
Super talented, super artistic. I remember the first time I heard it, I was floored. So, I'm still floored.
We both were.
Yeah, we were like, wow.
Yeah, man. So, guys, don't forget also, if you want to know more, if you want to join our membership program, you can. It's just a simple button on the bottom of this video. It says join. That gives you access to 3 separate tiers of membership options for us. You get extra shows, shows just for you, early releases, discounts on merch, classes, all that jazz. So go ahead and hit the join now button.
Absolutely, and one of the greatest perks there is the class discounts, whether it's the Moyuba class or the 4-week course on all things Ifa Orisa from an entry level. So definitely check all those out. Today's episode is one I've actually been looking forward to for a while.
Me too.
I finally got it approved by the boss. Ifa and animals.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And I love animals, to be honest with you. When you begin to look at the humanity that goes into respecting an animal. My grandmother had this really great proverb. She said, even a dog deserves respect. And I've always kind of lived by that, kind of understanding that these are beings, Unfortunately, you step on the occasional ant, and that's horrible. But, when you have things that are sentient, like the quadrupeds and whatnot, and as it gets bigger, you begin to realize there's something more there than just, the random purr or bark. As such, Orunmila is actually syncretized with St. Francis of Assisi, or Assisi. In Spanish, it's Assisi. And he's actually seen as the saint that was kind to animals. And ironically, Orunmila was the same way when he wasn't having to, effectuate his position of that of sacrificer, which honestly is the least favorite part of our job, at least for me. I know there's no pleasure extracted from anything that causes any harm to anybody. But when it comes to my profession, I do it in a way that I see as most humane and most respectful, very similar to how a rabbi or an imam would perform their function as well. So I'll never forget my godfather when it was finally time for me to hold the knife, because I was very resistant. Not because I was necessarily adverse to the idea of, fulfilling the process. It was just I had so much respect for the knife and the animal and Ifa that I really didn't want to jump into it. So, for a long time you're holding. Like, I want to make 𝗀𝗶𝗍𝗶𝗍, hold my rooster, you're the rooster guy. So that was my job. So just perfecting hand placement and position and pressure and knowing how to hold, what to hold, angles, all these different things that most people outside wouldn't seemingly be aware of. And I remember when he first gave it to me, and he actually facilitated it, and he told me, he said, remember that a bad sacrifice can cost you your life.
Ooh.
And I said, what do you mean, like I'm going to cut myself? He said, well, that, but apart from that, remember that when you sacrifice an animal, it goes to heaven with a message. It goes for its judgment. And one of the questions that it gets asked is, how did they treat you? And what you want every rooster and every goat and everything that passes through your hands to say is, hey, Joseph did the best he could. He treated me with respect. He was kind. And, it was what it was. So that is the key for all the young brothers that are coming up, being that women can't sacrifice in any of the African faiths, being that they are life givers and creators, and we are the destroyers of nature based on our musculature. to all the young brothers or brothers in general, let's never forget that, life and death is always within our hands as a priest of this spirituality, whether it's Brother Babalawo's, Brother Orishas and Oriates, always give it the respect that it deserves, right? Now, a lot of people ask, and we're going to go into different animals and what they mean and why we sacrifice certain ones and all those things, but I like to reiterate a patakis. There is a short video on the channel about it, but we'll expound upon it here. It's in the 𝗿𝗲𝗹𝗁𝗲, or 𝗿𝗶𝗸𝗁𝗲. And in that 𝗿𝗲𝗹, it was identified why animals need to be sacrificed, right? And why in all of the old world faiths, animal sacrifice is still utilized and present. So there was a time when we tried to incorporate vegan Ifa thousands of years ago. Someone had an epiphany and said, hey, we don't need to sacrifice animals to get that result. So they stopped sacrificing things from a spiritual context, right? Maybe they even stopped eating meat. Pure chaos ensued after this. This completely disrupted the reincarnation process. And, there were a bunch of souls in heaven that were trying to be reincarnated. There were a bunch of souls within animal bodies on earth that were trying to go through their process as well. But being that, the priests weren't sacrificing anymore, everything was backed up and crowded. So with it, epidemic, famine, the people stopped consuming meat. They started feeling the effects of that. Divination was performed and 𝗿𝗶𝗸𝗁 was revealed, where Ifa said that they needed to start sacrificing again, or it was going to basically represent the end of humanity. So the next step, 𝗿𝗶𝗸𝗁 himself went to go and pick out the animals. Now, from a divine standpoint, Ifa says that whatever animals the person who's going to be offering the 𝗿𝗶𝗸𝗁 grabs were the ones that were destined for him based on faith. It says that Ori and 𝗃𝗏 guide the person's hands to grab or be selected for the animal that they most, needed or were going to utilize. And through that animal being sacrificed to a deity, that animal in the past life must have done something horrible to be able to meet this end. So by serving a positive purpose, it can now go back to heaven and be judged again to move up the reincarnation ladder, right? To possibly even deserving the form of a human being once more. So being that we are seen in the 𝗿𝗏𝗹𝗁𝗲 as the apex, beings on the food chain based off of our rationale, thought, and creativity. Nothing physical, of course, because probably we'd all get our butts kicked by a cat, based on, us having no natural defenses, So there's that. Now, that's why we sacrifice, right? But I think you were going to ask a question, Phil. I remember we were talking about it off screen.
Yeah, so I really wanted to know, and people probably in the chat want to know, is there an 𝗿𝗲𝗹 or a story or a patakis on why we cannot communicate with animals?
Absolutely. So, and that kind of leads into what I was just talking about, because the 𝗿𝗏𝗹𝗁𝗲 says that, human beings are at the top of the food chain because of what I expressed. Now, one reason is because of what we did to the crab. And then we just came out with that video semi-recently on 𝗏𝗏𝗹𝗁𝗲, where the crab was kind enough to lend his head to man. And when man went to the competition and impressed 𝗿𝗏𝗹𝗁𝗲 made him the king of animals, right? So when man went back to the crab was like, hey, can I have my head back? Because, I want to try my shot and see if I'll be the king of animals. But man said, how could I give you your head back when I've already been gifted this privilege? So, and then the crab tried to snap at him. And being that he couldn't see, man kicked the crab down the hill, and the two stones that lodged in his sockets became his eyes. That's why crabs to this day have these itty bitty eyes. But based on that occurring, all the other animals saw how man betrayed the crab, and they said, we'll never interact with him the same again because his arrogance was unparalleled. So that's why humans and animals don't speak. And that's why animals literally don't speak to us or act as if they don't understand us, because man cannot be trusted. And I think even as a human being, we all know this as well. The 𝗿𝗏𝗹𝗁𝗲 has another interesting theme that's similar, but it says that the first beings that were initiated into Ifa were actually animals, right? Like, for example, the cat, the elephant, the dog, the peacock, the snail, these were the original priests of Ifa. And they say that with time and evolution, whether it was through man's betrayal after receiving the blessing that was becoming Awo, because they say that in 𝗃𝗏𝗍𝗍, the process of becoming the king of the animal kingdom was actually a metaphor for becoming a Babalawo or a priest. So once they saw that they initiated man, and he became arrogant, or he didn't have the self-control or the honor to maintain the precepts of Ifa, they turned their back on him. It also didn't help that we were sacrificing them to be able to have a means to an end. But it says that actually the original priests of Ifa were animals. That's why you'll look at certain patakis. Like, for example, Iworihuani was where the cheetah initiated the leopard into Ifa. How did they do that? Well, in antiquity it happened. Or it was somebody that had those same characteristics that was a human being. But either way, they were the first ones, and they say we actually descend from them. Another thing that's really key to take into account before we get into individual animals and sacrifices and patakis is we are judged by 3 kingdoms when we go to heaven, right? Or
3.
to limbo. Yeah, 3 of them. So the first one is the plant kingdom, right? How did you treat wildlife, specifically fauna, foliage, plants, etc.? You know, maybe not grass, you know, because there's no way to avoid offending grass. But the other things, you know, did you litter? Did you not litter? Did you maintain a clean environment? Did you plant a tree? You know, did you try to continue earth, you know, to a certain degree? The second kingdom is humans, right? How did you treat your fellow man and woman? You know, how were you with children, people who, you know, couldn't defend themselves? These are all within the commandments of Ifa. You know, we the Babalawos and the Orisha are supposed to be the defenders of humanity. So how did you treat other human beings, whether they were initiated or not? And then lastly is the animal kingdom. You know, were you nice to the dog? Were you know, did you torture, God forbid, an animal? Did you any of these horrible things or any of these kind things? Did you help an animal? Did you feed a dog when he was on the corner? You know, how did you interact? You know, and based on those 3 judgments, either you make it in or you don't. So it's a constant reminder that even a dog deserves respect, even a tree deserves respect, a fellow human being deserves respect regardless of the position that they're in. So it says a lot about somebody's personality and character depending on how they treat others, you know.
Have you seen the meme of like the Holy Trinity of wholesomeness? It was a picture of, it's an AI photo, but it was a picture with Bob Ross, Steve Irwin.
That's the painter, right?
Yeah. Steve Irwin and Mr. Rogers saying,
oh, that's awesome.
You know, take care of nature, take care of your fellow man, you know, with Mr. Rogers, and then take care of the animals. So
rest in peace to all those gentlemen if they're not around, man. Real beacons for humanity, all 3 of them.
Yep.
You know, shout out to all of them. They all had an effect on us somehow. But some people will ask, well, Baba, why do we sacrifice certain animals versus others, right? So when we look at the animals that are most sacrificed within Ifa, it's really the most common livestock you could think of. And that's really a result of the Odu Baba Ifa, where Olodumare didn't want Ifa to end. It didn't want it to stop manifesting. So he wanted to make it the most common things so that it would never cause famine or necessity, right? So, for example, the ram, the goat, the female versions of each, the rooster, the hen, the chick, the duck, the quail, the guinea hen, all of these things. Very common poultry, livestock, nothing too extreme, occasionally the cow, etc. So when we look at the different animals, right, another thing to mention before we get into the livestock is why we don't sacrifice certain animals. Like, for example, the 𝗃𝗏𝗍𝗁 says why we don't sacrifice the parrot, because it's sacred and ideally we shouldn't consume its viscera because, you know, it could be cancerous, right? That's in the 𝗃𝗏𝗍𝗁 or 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗁 and 𝗃𝗶𝗸𝗏 as well. In the 𝗃𝗏𝗍𝗁𝗃𝗏𝗍, it says why we should never sacrifice any of the big cats to Ifa, because they say that he who meets the blood of the leopard will know his own soul. So the 𝗃𝗏𝗍𝗁𝗃𝗏𝗍 says why we don't sacrifice any of the big cats. Like, I've seen videos actually of, I saw a video one time of somebody sacrificing a tiger to Shango.
Really?
And I remember before I saw that, I actually had gotten the pataki about the soul of the leopard from 𝗃𝗏𝗍𝗁, which I actually didn't put in the 𝗃𝗏𝗍𝗁 video. before from my Ubona, who's a library, a walking library. And I remember right after that, I saw that video and I just looked and I said, man, this is why we have to study, because, you know, someone on an ego trip will be like, yeah, I'm going to give my Shango a leopard, or my Shango, I'm going to give him a tiger. And there's certain animals that are sacred that we don't touch, like the African gray parrot, the 𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃 bird, the vulture, and the 𝗃𝗶𝗹𝗁𝗃. These are things we do not touch and we leave alone. And it also depends on Odu, because, like, for example, in the 𝗃𝗶𝗃𝗃 Baba Iobe wasn't allowed to sacrifice rats, you know, and there's other Odus where it's like, yeah, give a rat to 𝘃𝗺𝗃. So another thing that has to be taken into account as well from a personal standpoint is, what does your Odu say? And it's also very key as well for anybody that wants to take any type of control of their spiritual well-being, because let's say you go to a priest, right? And the priest actually, in consultation, recommends a sacrifice that is taboo in your Odu. If you know better, you have to mention it there, because they might not know. I mean, Ifa is vast. There are certain animals that we don't sacrifice so anyway, but there's others that are debatable or based on sign, right? Yeah. So for example, like, why do we offer rooster, right? It could even come down to based on gender. But the rooster is a symbol of male virility, vitality, procreation. It's also seen as one of the greatest offerings to said Orishas when one is at war, just based on its character, it being aggressive and being a fighter, right? But it also represents male procreative prowess. So let's say a client comes and they're having difficulties, God forbid, with a sperm count or any other issues that could present themselves, or maybe somebody's doing witchcraft to affect them from procreating, or maybe they're just at spiritual war, or they have obstacles they need to overcome. While I'm asking certain things in the reading, I might keep that in mind of, hey, maybe a rooster needs to be sacrificed here based on the energy, as opposed to the hen, where, let's say, you know, you look at the hen is the nurturer, she's the mother, she is the caretaker. You know, a hen, just like all female animals, and this applies to the goat, she-goat concept as well, or the ram or the female ram, you know, it could be that we're facing fertility issues, we're having marital issues, or, you know, there could be things that are happening from a feminine standpoint that need a solution such as this. Now, why would I go with the hen rather than a female dove or a pigeon? Because the hen is identified or identifiable based on its gender, while the other animals are androgynous. That's why Orunmila identified those kind of animals as the most common sacrificially, because in Iobe, he was looking to see which animal had the best example of a home life, and it was ultimately the rooster, the hen, and the chick, because when he would go to other animal kingdoms, they didn't have their own names, like at least in the way the patakis is said in Spanish, it makes more sense. Like, he would go to the lions and he was like, what's your father's name? Leon. What's your mother's name? Leona. What's you know, this name? No, said thing. And it was like, okay, the apes, what's your name? Ape. What's her name? You know, and it was only when he got to the rooster and the hen and the chick that they each had their own name and their identifiable physiology, where he's like, these are the kind of energies we could work with to get a result, right? When we look at the ram, I must admit, the masculine animals such as the ram and the rooster specifically have some of the hottest blood that comes out. Like, I've given ram to brothers' heads, I've done head rogations with rooster, and I tell you, depending on the conditions within the room, you can actually see the steam coming out. Yeah, bro, it's so wild. You can actually see the steam coming out of the neck. Wow. So that just is a reflection of the character. The ram is the same thing. It's for progress. It's for overcoming enemies and obstacles. It's a very masculine animal, very you know, full of vitality. But it's also one of the common offerings given to Shango and Egungun, right? And it's seen as one of the animals that actually replaces the human form when it comes to initiation and things like that. And it's one of the animals that actually helps reconnect you to your ancestral spirituality via Egungun. That's why it's actually Egungun and Shango's favorite offerings, because it was actually the offering that Shango gave to Egungun when he was trying to impress his mother Oya. So, you know, that's why Egungun and Shango share so many qualities and characteristics, because whether you look at Shango as Egungun's father or stepfather, you know, Shango gifted him a lot of things. So it speaks of that. The female sheep as well, very huge egungun sacrifice. The male goat, ironically, has a lot to do with war, has a lot to do with avoiding deception. I mean, we were talking about it in one of the previous episodes, how the goat is never really in a flattering position. Like when you look in 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗏, he tried to, out Orula as a peanut thief, and because of it, he lost his head. If you look in 𝗃𝗶𝗿𝗁, he betrayed Shango, and Shango ate him for the first time, even though they were best friends. In 𝗃𝗶𝗿𝗏 is where 𝘄cie ate the goat because he was deceiving Orula, or in 𝗃𝗶𝗸𝗏, they actually turned Orunmila's enemy into a goat and sacrificed him to 𝘄cie. So it's really one of those. It's a predilect offering. A lot of Orishas are born with it, but at the same time, it also has a lot to do with war and overcoming situations that are similar. When you look at the female goat, like when you look at the Odu of Osarosung, it was where she actually owed Orunmila money. And Orunmila did a bunch of spiritual work for her for free to help her procreate and get her business off of the ground and all these different things. And when the goat did well, the she-goat, Orula came to just say hello, and she spazzed on him saying, "Oh, I don't have your money, stop harassing me." And Orula didn't even think about asking for the money, he was just saying hello. But 𝘄cie knew that the goat was deceiving Orula and not paying him on purpose. So 𝘄cie finagled things in a way where, before you know it, the she-goat ended up under Orunmila's knife, and that's why Orunmila eats she-goat, apart from a slew of other deities. You also have the concepts that certain deities like Oshun eat the male goat that's castrated, right? That's in the Odu of Obeyono. But, in Isese and a lot of Lukumi houses as well, they give the female goat as an initiatory sacrifice towards deities like Oshun or even Yemaya, right? Even though there's houses that feed, obviously, Yemaya ram, based on the Odu of 𝗶𝗸𝗏, that her and Shango pretty much share everything except for things like the duck or the turtle. So there's that. Now, for example, another animal that's pretty popular as far as sacrificially is the turtle, right? Known as 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗏. And why would someone sacrifice a turtle? Well, you kind of have to look at the characteristics of the animal. A turtle will live 100 years, so it's great for situations that have to do with health. It has stability. Let's say someone's coming to be able to establish a partnership, relationship, purchase a home. Now, mind you, this isn't the first option either. Like, it's not that, okay, you want to buy a house, let's just sacrifice a turtle. No, there's 100 other things we could ask beforehand. But if it does become identified that the Orisha does want a live animal sacrifice, that would be one of the things that first comes to my mind. Because the turtle is never homeless. No matter where he is, he has his shell. For things to progress quicker, ironically, and war as well. A lot of the deities, the majority of the time, ask for live sacrifices in two situations. Really three. I guess two. Health or war. And within war is witchcraft. So that's usually the two cases where they're like, okay, a life for a life. So there's that. Then you have animals like the quail. Right, the quail is a very alert animal. It's very nurturing as well. All of those things, whether it's somebody trying to construct a life, a home, the guinea hen as well. The guinea hen is a really interesting animal as well because, this is an Isese concept, but it's kind of reiterated in Lukumi as well as in the Odu of Ikakana, also in the Origosung, where Ori's preferred animal is the guinea hen. Like a lot of people on the channel ask me, Baba, what should we be offering to Ori? And a lot of people, when they think of the head rogation or the ibori, they think of the two white doves to the head because that concept is an obebara. But in reality, the deity that Ori most loves to be offered, apart from the catfish, right, and the Odu of 𝗃𝗶𝗍𝗏, we'll touch on that now because that's an animal too, is the guinea hen. And the reason being is because the guinea hen has a crown. Even though it came from getting hit on the head in Ikakana and Origosum, it still represents, Ori being in its most supreme position.
Is the guinea hen called something else? Because I'm trying to remember if I've ever heard that.
Well, in Yoruba it's called etu, right? But the guinea hen, that's pretty much, it's not the prettiest thing on the farm. It's actually the animal I most detest. That and the hen in general, because they're just, I'll never forget when I actually, we were working on Matanza one time in Houston, and I was still pretty green. You know, I hadn't interacted with certain things yet. And I remember the padrino came running into the house, and he was like, oh my God, the guinea hen got out. And I looked around, and everybody's face just turned white. And I said, I don't understand what's going on. I said, well, let's go get it. And my uncle kind of looked at me and said, let's go get it. I said, yeah, let's go get it. So when I went in and I saw this thing running up the wall and running,
oh no,
it was flying across the room. It was like the devil.
Are they big?
They can be, but they're just very nasty. They're very nasty animals. They're like velociraptors in bird form.
Oh man,
like
that's
really
that's what an ostrich or an emu is.
Pretty much. It's like a cassowary in like mini form. So it's got a big chichon on his head. He's got a big like lump, and then it has like these little hairs. It has this long beak, and it's really ugly. And it has like these little these little things hanging from its face, and it has these long nails. And to be frank with you, when it defecates, it smells horrible.
Oh,
and it scratches, and it's horrible. But I didn't realize all these things. So me, you know, being caveman, I just ran and I basically hopped over a bunch of boxes and grabbed it. And, you know, I'll never forget the guy who was doing the Santo there he looked at my uncle, he said, bring this guy all the time. He said, don't ever leave this guy at home.
He's our new wrangler.
Yeah, right, straight up. But now as I've gotten older and I've gone through it more, I don't know where that ambition and impetuousness went, but I detest them, to be frank with you. There's actually an interesting concept, and it can seem pretty cruel from the outside looking in, but two of the animals that are actually allowed to die with pain, unfortunately, are the guinea hen and the turtle because of how horrible they were in life. Like when you look at the 𝗃𝗶𝗃𝗃, the guinea hen was a degenerate gambler, right? He had a vice, and he owed the cat money. So the guinea hen wasn't going to pay him. So he was running from the cat, and the cat was going to hunt him down and kill him. So the guinea hen went running to his father, 𝗃𝗏𝗏's house, and 𝗃𝗏𝗏, ironically, at the time was shaving. So the guinea hen was hiding under 𝗃𝗏𝗏's white robe. The white cat came in and said, hey, I'm looking for your son. 𝗃𝗏𝗏 was like, I don't know where he is. But then 𝗃𝗏𝗏 looked down and saw the guinea hen, but the guinea hen was white now, because the majority of guinea hens are like a grayish, you know, with hints of blue and like these, you know, dots. And the dots were actually born in 𝗃𝗏𝗏, because through 𝗃𝗏𝗏's shaving, the suds fell on the guinea hen's body. So when the cat looked at the guinea hen he was seeing, he's like, this one looks like your son, but it can't be because it's white. And 𝗃𝗏𝗏 was like, yeah, so get the hell out of my house. And he kicked the cat out. And at that moment, the guinea hen looked at 𝗃𝗏𝗏, and 𝗃𝗏𝗏 said, hey, man, you got to get your life together, because I can't save you every time. You know what I'm saying? You have to be a man that pays his debts and doesn't bring issues to my home, you know, because I never taught you that way. So he was able to avoid death there, but they say that in the 𝗃𝗶𝗶𝗃𝗃, he kept doing the same thing, and someone hit him over the head and he died. So that's why the guinea hen, unfortunately, when you look at how it's sacrificed, I mean, I don't do this as much anymore just because I'm getting older and I really don't want nobody bashing my head against the floor. But the guinea hen, ceremonially, for the people who have seen it, you know, and this isn't private, it could happen at any moment when one is being given, they'll hit the head against the ground to kind of stun it before basically decapitating it. And the reason being is because the guinea hen has this defense mechanism that when it's about to be sacrificed, it actually holds its breath. Like most people, I would imagine, would, if, you know, things are being yanked off. Yeah. But the issue is at that point, the I don't know if I'm making this word up, the deoxygenization, or the removing of oxygen, actually causes the blood to coagulate and not flow. So, you know, we sacrifice the guinea and then no blood comes out. I mean, that was a complete waste of time. So that's why they do it that way. Now, when you look at the turtle, this is in the 𝗃𝗏𝗃𝗃𝗃 or 𝗃𝗏𝗃, and also in 𝘃𝗶𝗶𝗃𝗃 or 𝘃𝗶𝗃𝗃, where the turtle disrespected and betrayed his friend Shango, right? And the turtle tried to stab Shango with his knife. Now, the turtle wasn't holding a knife. The knife that it's referring to is the point of the shell behind the turtle's neck. So when the turtle was lunging forward to try to poke Shango with it, Shango grabbed him and said, you'll die on your own sword. And he actually pulled the turtle's neck back over it and began to actually, you know, decapitate it with one of the 𝗿𝗏𝗏, which were the thunderstones, you know, which is the famous song, 𝗃𝗏𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃 and so on and so forth, which is basically saying 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗁𝗃, which is saying, turtle, please don't kill me, you know. But ironically, you're actually sacrificing it. So if you ever see that, it's not anybody trying to be cool. It's just ceremonial process, but still pretty gruesome and pretty barbaric. But this is Africa. You know, what can you do? So that kind of goes over the animals and why we sacrifice certain ones and the energy behind each of them, you know, etc. Another really popular one as well are snails, right? You can offer snails to Ifa, Babalawo, Ogun is actually partial to being as well. And that could be, you know, head rogation, something for Ori as well, to tranquilize things, to calm things, to help things come into fruition. Because the snail moves at a pace where, you know, things don't get lost in context. You know, it's very proficient and precise based on it having patience. So that's why a snail might be offered as well. Another, I won't say popular one, but notable one is the dog to Ogun, which is completely, you know, based off of war, ultimately, and consecrating Ogun and I guess orientation, you know, kind of always being in a space where you're not lost or having the stability because a dog always knows where it's going. So things like that, but it's just one of the preferred foods of Ogun because in the Odu of Ogun Natatura was where originally the dog actually belonged to 𝗃𝗺 and the ram belonged to Ogun. And they went to a party. Ogun went to use the bathroom. They weren't serving any food at the tambol, which happens sometimes, unfortunately.
Uh-oh.
And 𝗃𝗺 and his guys got hungry, and they ate Ogun's ram, right? So 𝗃𝗺 thought it was all good. But when Ogun came out and he was ready to leave, and he's like, where's my ram so I can ride it home? 𝗃𝗺 was like, bro, we got hungry and ate it. And Ogun became so angry that he ate 𝗃𝗺's dog.
No.
He liked it so much that he said, you can keep the ram, the dog is mine.
Oh
so it's actually ironic because it was actually not his originally. So to be frank with you, the 𝗃𝗶𝗹𝗁𝗃 says dogs hate Ogun because Ogun eats them and 𝗃𝗺 doesn't. Just the same way 𝗃𝗏𝗍 says rams hate 𝗃𝗺 because he eats them, you know, but Ogun eats ram too, ironically. Ogun really doesn't care. He eats everything pretty much. But that's from a sacrificial standpoint, a basic rundown. Now, there's
about cats?
Uh-huh.
Cats. You talk about big cats. What about the little kittens and stuff?
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah.
It happens. Yeah. In very specific cases, for the most part, it's not pretty. But it is part of the process depending on what's the goal. But it's something that is very rare, as it should be. It's not as common as the dog to Ogun. I probably won't get into the cat too much because it's tricky.
Yeah, but what about like pet ownership though? Like not like sacrificing them or anything. What about like ownership?
I have a white cat.
Yeah.
Yeah, my cat, man. I love animals. I really do. It took a while for me to get used to pets because I'm from a Cuban household where like the dog kind of lived outside.
Yeah, the dog was feral.
Pretty much, you know what I'm saying? I didn't know if he liked us or not, or the random, you know, alley cat, whatever. But now that I'm at a place of adulthood and parenthood and I got babies, you know, I wanted them to have pets and things like that because of the humanity it teaches. And some people have asked me, they're like, you know, Baba, how are you able to differentiate? And, you know, it's very seamless for me because, you know, there's a big difference. And it really comes down to the emotional investment that you put into something. You know what I'm saying? I would never dream or dare or think of doing anything of harm to any of my pets, to be frank with you. They're family, you know. I get very annoyed with them, you know, when they defecate in the wrong place or they don't want to go outside and do as they're told. But, you know, I'd never hurt them. But, you know, unfortunately, when something's brought, I'll never forget the movie 300. And, you know, no matter how much you explain certain things culturally, some people are not going to understand this. And I can respect that because there's certain things I look at other cultures that I'll never understand, where people could say, well, in Ifa, we oppress animals. Well, we do it in the most respectful way. And apart from that, you know, this is usually coming from the same person that eats a cheeseburger anyway. I'll never understand, you know, cultures that do things that seem, you know, counterproductive or toxic to me, like cultures that oppress women, you know, harm children or anything of that nature. But, you know, animal sacrifice has been around since we've gotten hungry. I mean, we were just talking about that right now. Like, you know, what are we going to do? You know, because to be frank with you, the lion's not thinking twice about eating us. Now, it doesn't have much of an opportunity because it has a need that it's trying to fulfill. But I can't think too much about the well-being of the rooster that I'm sacrificing, because it's either I sacrifice this rooster and I eat it and I provide for my family, or what am I going to do? You know, unfortunately, it could happen to any of us at any given time. That's why you do it in the most respectful way possible. But, you know, it reminds me of the movie 300, to be frank with you. Like, there was a part in the movie where they were about to go to war. I think it was the last scene when they knew they were going to die. And he said, "Turn your heart cold, boys." And I'll never forget that, because my godfather told me, because he saw that I was getting a little emotional one time, and I was like, you know, overthinking. He said, you can't think about it too much, because, you know, it's like the 𝗿𝗲𝗹𝗁𝗲 says, if we don't do it, what are we going to do? You know, this is part of the job. Handle yourself like a professional and like a man. And, you know, from that point forward, I always have. But, you know, when the young guys come in, that's why I always say there's a coaching process. This isn't blood sport by any means. You know, and there's a certain protocol and conduct that goes with it. But, you know, it's very simple to have pets and things like that. That's a completely different part of the heart and mind. And unfortunately, when something's coming and it needs to be transitioned, you know, this is the job that was chosen for us or by us. So, you know, it's like you look at a surgeon, right? He doesn't want to cut anybody by any means. But if he doesn't, you know, there's going to be a worse outcome for the person that has arrived on his table. So you have to do the mature thing and understand that not everything that's good is pretty or comfortable. You know, and that's why you have to really admire Ifa or any of these old world traditions, because they stood fast towards their concepts and virtues of, to be able to get a positive result, we might have to do something negative in the process. But this is just the balance of the universe and how evolution allocated nature. So, get into a couple animals as far as their consecratory history and when they were initiated and things like that. This might end up being a part 2, to be frank with you, because there's so many that are mentioned in Ifa. You know, it could even be a little mini series in itself. But the first animal that comes to mind when I think of Ifa and the priesthood of animals and the symbolism, it has to be the elephant. You know, it's true, the lion may be the king of the jungle, but really the king of the world is the elephant. You know, we're talking about the largest land mammal, more than likely animal, on Earth. It is seen as the embodiment of the concepts and principles of Ifa. You know, when you look at an elephant, it has a majesticness to it. It is serene. It is tranquil. It is calm. It is methodical. I've always said Ifa is like the elephant. The practice of Ifa is like the elephant. Any day, or in a blessed state, it moves calmly. It moves majestically. You know, that's why Ifa has to be practiced at a calm pace and not rushing through it. But in the negative, it's also like an elephant, you know. If we rush through things, it'll become aggressive. It'll become tyrannical. It'll become destructive. All of these different things. So, you know, Ifa is embodied in the elephant. There's a couple different stories that speak about its character. I mean, unfortunately, one of them is in the 𝗿𝗲𝗹𝗁𝗃. And in the 𝗿𝗲𝗹𝗃 was where Orunmila recognized that he had a lot in common with the elephant and really, you know, became very fraternal with him and wanted to learn from him. And he assumed vice versa, you know. They were both Babalawos, right? They were both initiates of Ifa. But the elephant had a lot of arrogance based on his size. So he would usually get a lot of attention, and it was really because of his appearance rather than his practice. So Orunmila, never becoming envious of his friend, but always being motivated, started really learning Ifa in a very practical way. And because of it, he started gaining or garnering a huge following. A following to the point where, you know, the elephant wasn't getting that kind of opportunity anymore. He wasn't getting that kind of attention. So he started noticing it, and he started becoming silently envious of his best friend Orunmila, to the point where he wanted to eliminate him and kill him. So every morning Orunmila had the habit of throwing the chain to see what Ifa had in store for him that day. And when he did, the Odu of Obekana was revealed, where Ifa said he needed to carry a weapon on him. Orunmila thought this was interesting or a little perplexing because he actually was going to meet up with his friend the elephant that day. So the issue was, you know, he was very faithful to Ifa. He was loyal to Ifa, so he took the weapon with him anyway. In some versions, they said it was a bow and arrow or a blow dart situation. And when he went to the jungle and he saw the elephant in the clearing, he waved. And the elephant started running towards him. And Orunmila thought he was just joking around, you know, because he was a funny guy. But he noticed that there was a different look in the elephant's eyes that day. There was a different ambiance or demeanor about him or energy. And as he was getting closer, he was actually speeding up. So Orunmila was like, man, why is this guy always playing? But it got to the point where Orunmila started getting nervous because the elephant was getting dangerously close at a velocity that he wasn't going to be able to stop. So when he realized that, you know, something was wrong, he actually shot the elephant in the heart with the blow dart, right, that had poison on it. When he did that, the elephant fell, and Orunmila went running over, you know, saying, why would you attack me? What happened? And the elephant looked at him and said, what could anybody want from you that they couldn't get from me? Why would anyone pay attention to you when they could pay attention to me? And those were the elephant's last words to his friend, and Orunmila was heartbroken over it.
Jeez.
He was completely heartbroken over it. And he said, you know, I never knew that my best friend was my worst enemy. But even with that, he didn't want to smear the elephant's reputation. And Orunmila, out of honor and respect, actually started butchering the elephant, right? He consumed the meat, sold some of the meat, etc., all these different things to his family. But there were certain key items that he kept for himself. And one of them was the top of the elephant's cranium, which actually became the tray of Ifa, or the tablet of Ifa, the 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗁. The other was his tusk, what actually became the 𝗃𝗶𝗍, not the 𝗃𝗍, forgive me, the 𝗃𝗏 or the 𝗃𝗏𝗍, which is either the horn or the bell that is characterized with an Ifa. He took the elephant's tail and turned that into the 𝗃𝗏𝗍, all right, or the 𝗃𝗏𝗍, which was the fly whisk that the Babalawo uses till this day. And all of these different things ended up becoming the tools of the Babalawo, right? So the elephant unwittingly actually fulfilled his destiny as being the most important animal in the mythology of Ifa through his treachery to Orunmila. So, you know, till this day, we still utilize all these tools as a commemoration of the friendship they had, but also, you know, the reminder of, hey, you know, be careful who you surround yourself with and always have faith in Ifa above anything that anyone could tell you, right? Mm-hmm. But the elephant is there. The elephant is also in my Odu of 𝗃𝗏𝗍𝗃. It's where the elephant's ear was born, through the 𝗃𝗏𝗃𝗃 leaf, where the elephant, you know, learning that less is more and learning what to say and when to say it, and how it's always important to listen twice as much as we speak, actually was given ears. That's why if you look at the malanga leaf for the 𝗃𝗏𝗃𝗃, it looks like an elephant's ears. And that was actually what the elephant put on his head, and that's where his ears came from till this day. And in the Odu of Owani Wosaso as well, it speaks of when the elephant became arrogant with deities like Oduduwa and Obatala, and he met the same end, where his body ended up becoming the tools of Ifa. They even say that the original ide, or bracelets and necklaces of Ifa, were strung with the hair from the elephant. So, you know, it speaks of all those. How much time do we have?
It's about time.
Yeah?
Yeah, about 45 minutes in again.
Yeah.
You're good. You have a really good internal clock.
I do. I kind of feel it.
Yeah.
You know? And the funny thing now is, you know, you got this clock here with the temperature and stuff like that. I actually don't notice it. But I definitely, this is going to lead to a number 2 because we still have to go over the leopard. We still have to go over the peacock, which is my personal favorite.
We get the whole animal kingdom. Man.
Yeah, pretty much, man. I didn't realize that when we came up with this idea, me and wifey, that it could really turn into, you know, a solid another 2 episodes for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's a good taste. We went over the theology behind animals within our spirituality. We touched on, you know, how animals were the first priests of Ifa, why they don't trust us anymore, and 𝗃𝗏𝗍𝗃 and 𝗃𝗏𝗍𝗃, the various animals that we sacrifice and why, the energy behind them. I'm sure this is going to spawn a bunch of questions, which I love.
Yeah, drop them in the comments.
Why we sacrifice them in 𝗿𝗶𝗸𝗁. We went over the elephant, which is, in my opinion, the king of animals in Ifa. He is the perfect example, but we got a bunch of other ones to get into, guys. So I hope you really like this one, and be sure to drop a bunch of comments so we know what to incorporate as we start coming out with more installments of this one, because we still have so much to go over. So awesome.
Yeah, well, speaking of going over, let's go over our best part of the show.
Yeah.
Time to show some love to the people who show love to you, man. All right, folks, if you take a look right under this video, there's a join our membership program button. It's real easy. You just click that button, choose what tier you want to join, and you get definitely a bunch of perks, whether it's extra episodes, live chats just for you guys, discounts on merch, discounts on the classes, you name it. And of course, you get a shout out on the shows, all the shows. So let's take a look at, we're gonna go over the premium superfans today.
Love it.
All right, let's start off with 𝗃𝗶𝗍𝗶𝗍.
𝗃𝗶𝗍𝗶𝗍.
All right, they've been around 7 months.
Yeah, oh yeah.
We got Hemp Lord. They are an OG. They've been there forever.
Triple OG.
21 months.
Oh my God.
We got 𝗃𝗍𝗍𝗲, around
Awesome.
9 months.
I got some blessings.
We got Ruben for 21 months.
Oh man, whoa, OG.
We got Sean Gale. We
Thank
got
you.
10 months. We got Joseph 𝗀𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃,
Hey, boy,
11 months.
Awesome.
We got Sublime Prince,
Oh yeah.
12 months.
Oh sure.
And
Right,
Derek Jones for 15 months.
Blessings to my godson Derek. Guys, be sure to look into classes as well and all the perks that come with the membership program. If you're in it and know somebody that can benefit from it, definitely let them know about it. BotánicaCandlesandMore.com is up and running for all service and product needs. We do ship. If you don't have the opportunity to catch us on YouTube sometimes, be sure to check us out on all the major platforms of Apple, iHeartRadio, Spotify, so you can listen to us.
You should be able to tell your Alexa too.
Alexa as well. Yeah, definitely. Nice. That's actually really nice. Alexa, play Our Roots and Baba Knows the Way.
Yeah.
Baba knows the way.
I hit the button. You didn't hear it, but there you go. Everybody else heard it.
There we go.
Baba knows the way.
Oh gosh, that never gets old. But guys, be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe. A big thank you from all of us here at Our Roots Podcast. And until next time, see the light.
Baba Joseph showed the path today. Baba knows the way, we follow the signs. He walks with the Orisha through sacred lines.